Hello and welcome to this webinar on Therefore 2021, which happens to also be version 26 of Therefore Online. My name is Jennifer Schmidt and I'm here together with Kono Fusco, and we're going to talk about the great new features coming in the latest version of Therefore. So one of the most frequently asked questions that we get is this event being recorded? And of course you're watching it on YouTube right now, but you can also download it from the extranet. So this is the latest version of Therefore, and it's available to both Therefore on-premise as well as Therefore online. This is of course part of the continuous delivery release cycle, which means that new features are made available to Therefore online customers as soon as they're available. So what's coming up in Therefore 2021? So in this release, we're going to look at what is new to Therefore 2021, both from the perspective of Therefore Online, but also for on-premise. So this release features a Smart Capture, which is available now for on-premise customers, the Business Central connector, enhancements to the dynamic web viewer, new e-signature providers, a new viewing toolkit, as well as some other great features. I'll let Kono talk about Smart Capture.
Yes, thank you, Jennifer. Hello, everyone. My name is Kono, Head of Digital Engagement here at Therefore, and I'm happy to be bringing you our first feature in Therefore 2021, which is about Therefore Smart Capture. So Therefore Smart Capture was already available to customers of Therefore Online, and now it is available to on-premise customers who are upgrading to Therefore 2021 as well. And Therefore Smart Capture is basically an AI-based capture solution to automate the extraction of invoice data in its most basic form. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what the benefits are and how it works. Well, the benefits of an automated process to extract invoice data is, of course, that it saves you time. It increases your accuracy by eliminating potential for human error when transcribing data. And it reduces costs because it's done at a very affordable rate per page, and you have eliminated the cost of the human interaction placed in there. So, in general, how does Smart Capture work? So there's a few steps involved. First, what happens is you save the invoice to a Therefore category to start the recognition process. The workflow then uploads the invoice to be processed and recognized by Smart Capture. So this is uploaded to the recognition server, which has the AI behind it doing this processing. After the AI has processed the invoice, users can review the captured index data for quick and easy data validation. And once validated, invoices can be further processed using Therefore workflows for further efficiency. So it's basically a four-step process that starts with saving the document, being uploaded, being read by the recognition server, and followed up by user validation. All right, now we mentioned the workflow. This is required for Smart Capture to work. Before I mention that, I just want to say that the requirements for this are that you have either Therefore Online or Therefore 2021. So if you are using an on-premise version earlier than Therefore 2021, you will not have access to Smart Capture, so got to upgrade to get the functionality. For Smart Capture to work, you also need this workflow, as I mentioned, and you also need to purchase Smart Capture pages because the consumption is based on the amount of pages that you send through the system. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. For now, let's take a look at how the workflow works. First step is you upload to Smart Capture. The document is uploaded, it's processed in the AI. You have the manual validation step, which is required by the user. After this is approved by the user, it gets sent to the final category. This is all done automatically, so the only manual intervention stage of a user is in the manual verification step. And that's pretty much it. And I wanted to mention, of course, that you can use any capture solution supported by Therefore to get the invoices saved in that category. Doesn't matter if you're just dragging and dropping a document, saving it through Capture Client, Content Connector, whatever you want. Doesn't matter. As long as the invoice gets in the category, it'll get uploaded. After the workflow uploads the data to the Smart Capture AI engine, users will get a task to manually validate the data. As you can see on the screenshot, users will be asked to compare the extracted data, which is visible on the left here, with the original document to check if the recognition worked correctly. This step is necessary to help train the AI engine so that you tell it, yes, you got this information right, or no, you got it wrong, here's how to correct it. It cannot be skipped currently. It is required for every invoice that goes through. And once all fields are confirmed, the validation is complete, so the user will click confirm down there at the bottom. The document will be moved to the final category for storage and further processing. And what we're showing you here is just how the different fields are matching to the final category. So like the invoice number will go to the index, to the invoice number index data in the final category that you've set up for the AI capture. So now when it comes to smart capture pages, how are these calculated? Well, first it's important to know that you can decide how much information you want to extract from each page. So you can choose to extract just the header and footer information. These are always extracted. Or you can choose to extract the header and footer plus line items. So if you choose to extract line items, header and footer are always extracted with it as well. This means that your choice is to use extraction with line items or without. Smart capture pricing is based on how many pages you extract and on how much is extracted per page. You can choose if you only want to index the header and footer, or if you also want to index the line items, as I mentioned. Administrators can change this. So this does give you the flexibility to decide how you want to consume your pages. The costs are dynamically updated based on how much information you extract from each page. So let's get into it a little bit more here. We do have an interface in the Therefore Solution Designer to track your consumption. It provides accurate information on consumption, billing, and page validity. And the way the consumption is calculated is basically like this. You have one page, so one page that you have available to you is worth one page with line items, or 2/3 of a page without. So to make it simpler, imagine that you have 1,000 pages in your license. This means you can extract 1,000 pages with line items, or 1,500 if you're just extracting header footer. So in reality, you're getting a bonus if you choose to extract just the header and footer. You'll get 50% more pages. One important thing to remember before we move on to the demo. We mentioned that Smart Capture is AI-based, and what this means is that due to the nature of the AI, it starts learning from the very first invoice. So just like you wouldn't teach a baby wrong words or the wrong names of colors, you shouldn't teach Smart Capture wrong information. So what does this mean? Concretely, make sure you start correcting any mistakes that Smart Capture makes. So in the manual validation screen, where you were presented with the chance to check information and correct anything, definitely correct it, because if you don't correct it, or if for whatever reason you change something to be wrong, even though the AI got it right, it will learn from that. And that's not something you want, because then it's just not going to work properly for further invoices that you push through it. So reinforcement really works here. Negative reinforcement will yield worse results, and you really shouldn't do that. Positive reinforcement, correcting and confirming correct extraction, will teach the AI to be better. You got to be careful with that, because that means even when you're doing demos. So even when you're doing a demo for your system, don't purposely have the system get it wrong, because that's negative confirmation. So we really don't recommend that. So at this point, let's maybe move on to a demo of Smart Capture. For this, I'm going to ask Jennifer to take over. So Jennifer, feel free.
All right, thank you very much, Kona, for that explanation about Smart Capture. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how easy Smart Capture is to use. So what I have here is I've got Smart Capture. I've got a category here for the Smart Capture input. And then I've also got another category here where the invoices, once validated by Smart Capture, can actually be sent for approval before payment. So I'm just going to drag and drop these invoices here. So I've got a Smart Capture input category right there. This one is, the first one that I'll do is a Singapore invoice in Singapore dollars. Let's look it up it's a PDF. And as you can see here, it's actually got 3 different pages. And so we'll have Smart Capture look at all of those 3 pages to see if it's able to correctly identify the amount. And what's interesting here with in Singapore is that they actually don't use VAT, they use general sales tax, GST. So we'll see how it does with that different nomenclature. And I've also got a US dollar invoice right here. As you can see here, this is in US dollars. And I also have an invoice which is in German. Rechnung. So as you can see here, this one is actually quite poor quality. As you can see, it was like scanned, it's not quite straight. And so we'll see how does Smart Capture do with this Euro invoice, which is in German. As you can see here, for most businesses, especially in Europe, you will get invoices that are from different countries, maybe in different currencies. So it's really interesting to see how Smart Capture does with that. So we're just going to go to the Smart Capture input category, save it, Singapore invoice, or drag and drop, I should say. I'll drag and drop into the category, and then finally the US dollar. And as Kona mentioned, you can use any method for getting your invoices into Smart Capture. It really doesn't matter. But in my case, for the demo purpose, it was easiest to just drag and drop. But of course, you could use the content connector to monitor a mailbox where people email invoices to you. You could use the Capture client or any other scan software that you have. So it's really up to you how you get it in. But now let's go to their workflow inbox and see how did Smart Capture do. So here is actually already this one looks like it's the Dell invoice from Singapore. So I claimed the workflow task. And as you can see here, it was actually able to go through, it was able to identify the quantity, the unit price here was 330, the total amount was actually, let's see here, is that 438? That actually looks right. All of this looks good to me. So, and the vendor VAT number also was able to get that. If you're scrolling down here. So, to me, it looks like it identified all of this information here. And so I can just click on confirm. And now let's go to the next one. All right, and this was the US dollar invoice. And what I can do here is I can just compare the invoice number, say that yes, that looks okay. And what else do we have here? The line items were also able to be read out correctly if I look here, 999. And also if you look, here at the currency, it says US dollars. And you got 4 line items, 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, I just click on confirm. And now it's going to the next task automatically again. And this was the German invoice. So again, here I can click here 26054. That's also correct. The date 6/10/2014. And here's got the line items. All right, and click and confirm. And so there were some other invoices as well in the queue, so it just automatically keeps on going. So overall, as you can see here, the Smart Capture process works really quickly. Now, let me open up the Solution Designer really quick, just to show you the workflow in the background. So what we have in the background here is we have the Smart Capture process. As you can see, it's exactly what we showed you in the PowerPoint presentation earlier. We have saving, upload to Smart Capture recognition, user reviews the invoice. If the user approves, it gets moved to a different category, where then the second workflow for validation for payment can actually be sent. Or it can be rejected, in which case a retention policy can be applied that will then delete the invoice after a predetermined amount of time. And here, if we look at the Smart Capture, we're able to go into settings. And here under the Smart Capture settings, we can look at the basic types of information here. We can check what type of information Smart Capture should extract. And we can also look to see how many credits do we have available, how many pages are available for recognition. So this is all very easy and gives us a great overview on what Smart Capture is doing, how much have we consumed, and what is available to us. So with that in mind, I'll now continue with the rest of the presentation. So now that we've seen the demo, let's talk about licensing. So Smart Capture is licensed based on consumption. So depending on how you license, therefore, you can also license a certain number of pages to use with Smart Capture. For Therefore Online customers who have a monthly subscription, they can subscribe to packs of 100 or 1,000 pages and or use pay as they go. The pages that they purchase are valid from the 25th of the current month till the 25th of the next month. And of course, they can also use billing on a pay-as-you-go basis. So this means if they purchase a pack of 100 and they one month need more pages, they need maybe 106, then those additional 6 pages would be consumed on a pay-as-you-go basis. For Therefore Online prepaid, these are customers who have prepaid their Therefore Online systems for a certain number of years in advance. They can purchase packs of 1,000 or 10,000 pages, which will be valid until the end of the prepaid period. So if they prepaid Therefore Online for a period of 5 years, those 1,000 pages would be valid for 5 years. And finally, for Therefore On-premise customers, they can purchase packs of 1,000 or 10,000 pages, which are valid until the end of the CSS expiration date. So the CSS expiration date is, of course, the Canon software support assurance policy. So again, if they have CSS prepaid for a certain number of years, for 5 years in advance, the pages that they purchase for Smart Capture are also valid for that entire period. All right, let's move on to pop quiz. True or false? Once you select if you want to extract line items or not, that selection is final forever and cannot be changed. That, of course, is false. It can be changed anytime in the Solution Designer. True or false? Smart Capture increases the CSS value of a Therefore installation. And that again is false. Smart Capture does not increase the CSS value. So regardless of how many Smart Capture pages you use, the CSS value of your installation will not change. True or false? There is 100% no manual work with Smart Capture. And this is false because users do need to manually verify the extracted data. Finally, Smart Capture dynamically calculates costs based on if you're extracting line items or not. And that, of course, is true. Consumption is dynamically updated. And you can actually see in the Smart Capture dialog in the Solution Designer exactly how many pages you have left and how long those pages are valid for. And now some frequently asked questions. Can we skip the manual verification step even if we know AI capture is accurate? No, that's a planned feature for a future release. Is it available with on-premise Therefore? Yes, it is, starting with Therefore 2021, which is now. Can I continue to use the content connector, other capture solutions, as well as Smart Capture? And yes, of course. And finally, can Smart Capture be used for other types of documents or other invoices? It's optimized for invoices, but also works with similar documents like purchase orders. All right, so now I'm going to hand back to Kono to go over some of the other new features coming with this release.
Thanks, Jennifer. So the next feature we wanted to tell you about was the Therefore connector for Dynamics Business Central. So to give you a little bit of background, the ERP software previously known as Therefore Dynamics NAV was renamed by Microsoft to Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. This is just a continuation of the NAV line It's just that because they changed the architecture of the software, they changed the name as well. Now, therefore, had a connector for Dynamics NAV, but of course, the fundamental architectural change from NAV to Business Central necessitated an update to the connector as well. So we have a new connector that is really made specifically for Business Central for the newest version of what was previously called Dynamics NAV. Just as with the previous connector, this one allows you to have two-way communication with invoices, purchase orders, and other data. Allows you to send them from Business Central to Therefore or from Therefore to Business Central. So there's a lot of interaction between the two systems. They're very tightly knit, and they, with this connector, work very well together. Licensing-wise, this uses the same licensing as the connector for Dynamics NAV. So if any customers have that connector, they upgrade their Dynamics NAV system to Business Central. No new license purchase needed. Just configure the new connector. For anyone who has Business Central, doesn't have the connector yet, again, they would purchase the license for the Dynamics NAV connector, and that would work just fine with this. Now, we won't get into a demo of this because it's more of a technical nature and it will take too long, but we do have more technical information on this. So if you go to our YouTube channel and you check out the video called Therefore Experts Update for Therefore 2021 and version 25, we have a good explanation of the configuration of this and how it all works. So if you want to check that out, feel free. It's a really good demo done by one of our senior developers, and it really explains clearly how the connector is configured and shows a couple of use cases as well. Another one is new e-signature providers. So for years, Therefore has had integrations with e-signature providers that you can send documents from Therefore to be signed with certain providers. We've added some new ones this year. So just to mention, we previously had integrations with DocuSign, SimpleSign, and USign. Those are still around. Of course, they're still supported 100%, but some new ones have been added this year. So these include Please Sign, Scribble Sign, These include Please Sign, Scribble, Signatura, Scribe, Adobe Sign, and Visma Sign. This means that we have these supported out of the box, which means you don't need to do any custom integration. You just have to enter basically your credentials for these providers, and it'll work with the automated and manual modes of sending documents to get signed. Each one is a little different. Of course, the basic interface within Therefore to enter your credentials is the same for all of them. But as you can see, these are different products. They have different interfaces. And it's important to note that for this feature to work, you need credentials from these providers. Therefore, does not sell those. So you would have to get those on your own. So if you're using, for example, Adobe Sign, you would have to get a license from Adobe for that, and you'll be able to use your credentials for the integration with Therefore. Just a reminder that not all of these providers are available in every region. So some of these are internationally available, others may only be available in certain regions. So if you're not sure, take a look. And of course, we always have the possibility to integrate with custom e-signature providers. That one requires a little more effort, but we do have a generic interface for that to happen. But that does require a little more development effort using our API. So if you have any questions about that, if that's something you're interested in, please feel free to get in touch with our support team, and we'd be happy to inform you of that process. This next one we wanted to tell you about is the updates to the Dynamic Web Viewer. So there's a couple of additions that have been made to the Dynamic Web Viewer. So to give some context, Dynamic Web Viewer is the new web client that therefore is using. So we still have support for our classic web client, but the dynamic web client is the new one, and it's the one that we're developing quickly to add features to it. And we have added a couple features now in version 26, which is therefore 2021. First one is that there's support for tasks. So these are not workflow tasks, they are ad hoc tasks. For those of you who are not familiar with them, these work just like the tasks within, let's say, Microsoft Outlook. So they're really temporary tasks, not with the workflow behind them, but just a sort of simple tracker of things that need to be done. So that's now supported in the dynamic web viewer. Another change, especially compared to version 25, which was therefore online, is the support for case management. Basically, what this means is that you now have full control of your cases within the dynamic web viewer, just as you would have it within the therefore navigator. So you can perform the same actions, the same management tasks that you would have in the installed client. You can do that in the dynamic web viewer now. Some additional ones as well. Smart capture verification. So this means that if you open a smart capture verification task from the dynamic web viewer, you'll be able to get the pop-up and see the document from there, and you'll be able to take care of that. Whereas previously this was only available in the installed, therefore navigator client. Now this works for the dynamic web viewer as well. We've also added support for calculated fields. That means when you start entering some index data, fields that do automatic calculations, let's say to sum or multiply certain fields, that is now supported in the dynamic web viewer. There's also been some smaller additions, still useful, like being able to delete a file from a document, being able to look at field level permissions. You can add documents to existing files within the dynamic web viewer. So there's been quite a few changes, quite a few quality of life changes to really help out the people who use the dynamic web viewer, which is a great client. It's very fast, and it is the main focus for our web client development. I think now Jennifer has a demo for this. So Jennifer, I'll hand it back to you so we can take a look at some of these.
Right, thank you very much, Kono, for the introduction to the Dynamic Web Viewer. So the Dynamic Web Viewer was introduced last year, and we've been working on it to make it better and better every single year. So I'd like to go through some of the biggest changes so that you can see where it's at today. First, it's possible to download the original document from the viewer. To demonstrate this feature, I'll search for a document, click on the new command in the right-hand column to download the file in the original format. This means if the file was originally a PDF, it'll be downloaded as a PDF, or Word, or whatever the original corresponding format was. Thereafter, you can open the file using the native application. It's also possible now to save index data only documents. To do so, you just open up a category, select Add New Document, add the index data, save it without adding a file if you like, and now that file has been saved to therefore without a corresponding file in the background, so it's index data only. It's also possible to delete a file from a document. So remember, a therefore document can consist of numerous files. For example, a therefore document might include an image as well as a Word document. So I'll add the image here. Now you can see the therefore document has both the image as well as the PDF. And so now I'll just click on Remove File, and the other document, the image, is still in therefore. So now I'm just going to add a check-in comment to show that I made some changes and that other users will be able to see what changes I made with that check-in comment. So now the next feature is it's also possible to initiate and process ad hoc tasks from the Dynamic Web View. So as Kono mentioned, tasks are a feature that have been available in the installed client for many years now. They're very simple little tasks that you can use to assign a task to another colleague in your office. And they'll get an email telling them that they have a new task to complete, and then they'll get reminder emails if they don't do it. So it's a really easy way just to get things done but without having to configure an entire workflow. So what you can do here is you open up a document from the Dynamic Web Viewer. Then you click on Start Task and you assign the task to another user. Then you fill out all the information and assign a due date. And then your colleague will receive an email informing them of the task, and they'll also be reminded in case they don't complete the task on time. You can also start a workflow from the document view. That's also a new feature in the dynamic web viewer. From the action menu, just click on Start Workflow. Thereafter, you can select which workflow you want to start. Then you can check your workflow inbox area to see if you have a new workflow to process. Like Kono mentioned, it's also possible to use case management. You can see all the categories and documents associated with the case and manage them just like you would in the regular installed client. And furthermore, it's now possible to complete the Smart Capture verification step using the dynamic web viewer. So Smart Capture is an AI-based capture solution, like I mentioned before, and now you can also verify the data from the dynamic web viewer. So that's also a really handy way. So a lot of people working from home right now might have to approve invoices or verify the data. Working from home, and the dynamic web viewer is a great way to do that from a home environment or an environment where you're not in the regular Therefore environment and you don't necessarily want to install a client. So that's kind of an overview of what's going on with the dynamic web viewer. I'll finish up this presentation with a couple of other small enhancements. All right, so now that I've done the demo on the new web client, let's look at some of these other features. The first one that I'm going to go over is the Save Workflow History. This is a really neat new feature for workflow, and this means that if you have selected to delete the finished workflow instance after a set number of days, you can actually save the workflow history to a dedicated category. You can either attach it to the main document, or you can select which category you want to save the workflow history to. And that's really useful. So especially in terms of audit, you may not want to save the entire workflow and Therefore, just for space reasons, but you can put the workflow history in with the original document or in a dedicated category so that you can always see exactly what process the document went through. It's also possible to configure alternative workflow routes in case of error. So this means this is not a free-for-all. This does not mean that you can now purposefully leave errors in your workflow. No. The objective for this is if you have a workflow that often encounters errors due to circumstances that are out of your control when you're designing the workflow, you can now write in what that error code is and what action should be taken in case that workflow encounters the error. An example of this would be, for example, you are using the workflow to send a document for signing using an e-signature provider. However, it occasionally may happen that a user wants to send a document for signing that is write protected. In that case, you would get an error because it cannot be sent for signing because it's write protected. What should the workflow do? Previously, what always happened is that the workflow would be paused indefinitely until the error was fixed or the document was removed. Basically, the administrator always had to step in and fix it. Now what you can do is you can define what should be taken. Should an alternative route be taken? A different task? Should the error be ignored? Whatever is the best solution when a certain error happens. So it's very simple to configure. You simply define here, you add a row, you write in the error text in quotes, and then you define what should happen. You can pause processing, ignore the error, route to an alternative task, or route to the end. All right, so that's another really neat feature, and I think a lot of you out there are extremely savvy and will have plenty of use cases for this. And finally, other features, we've got enhanced viewing for Excel documents with a Therefore viewer with Group Docs, which is the new default viewer that we're using. We can now switch the default web client settings in the advanced settings. And finally, we also have the ability to import users from CSV for internal SAML and OIDC users via command line. So thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it. And be sure to check out all of our great new content on the extranet about Smart Capture and the new connector for Business Central. Thank you so much. Have a great day.